Yeah.
Welcome to Teamwork, A Better Way, the podcast filled with stories, experiences, and insights from leading high-performing team experts. Here are your hosts, Spencer Horn and Christian Napier.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Teamwork, A Better Way. I'm Christian Napier, joined by the incomparable Spencer Horn in his new digs. Spencer, how you doing?
So great. So good to be with you. I always look forward to our conversations and excited today because today I went on my hike in my new location. So I hiked a new trail, went for about 3.5 miles and got some good sweat going on.
So was that trail up one of the canyons there, or
Yeah,
where
no,
was it?
it's just right on the bench. It's kind of on the It's just right on the bench. It's kind of on the Bonneville shoreline area here, southwest of the valley, and there are multiple trails, mountain bike trails. I just wanted to get to know them a little bit, discover what they're like, and if I can manage them in my diminished state of balance and mountain biking capabilities. I just got to scout things out before I actually take the bike out. Till I figure out how to get, I need to get one of those adjustable seats so that I can lower it when the situation requires it.
Well, it does beg the question, how's the thumb? Is it fully recovered, or are you still
Yeah,
recovering from
thank you for
the
asking.
injury?
It's really pretty good and a little stiff, and I can tell. I mean, it when I stretch it too much, it hurts, but it's getting a lot better, and I feel like I'm going to be ready to ride soon. Let's ride.
All right. Well, I can't wait for you to get back on that bike. Now, we were supposed to have a guest today,
Yep.
Tim Keating, but he was not able to join us due to, well, he had some health issues and was not able to join us today. And so we wish
Yeah.
him the very best as he deals with that and recovers. So in the meantime, it's just you and me,
Yeah, and
Spencer.
I gotta say, I'm just really sad about it. I mean, you don't know all the background, but Tim and I go way back. As a matter of fact, 10 years ago, this year, is 10 years ago, we did a training in Orlando with his company and many guests, and then it was later that year that I went on a company cruise with his company and where some of my stories come from. That what a great experience that was. And so I'm personally sad that he's not with us, and I know that there are some listening that may be disappointed, so I just put that out there.
Yeah, well, yes, likewise. I was looking forward to meeting him. But like I said, we wish him the best. And what we've decided and what you recommended is that we just go ahead and have a conversation amongst ourselves. And you forwarded a very interesting article to me for today's topic. And the article is entitled "Trust May Have Some Nuances That You Haven't Considered." It's in the September edition of Forbes magazine by Roger Dean Duncan. Basically, uh, is like excerpts of an interview with the
Yeah.
author of a book, uh, Dr. Peter H. Kim from USC, who wrote a book, How Trust Works, the Science of How Relationships Are Built, Broken, and Repaired. And I'm really, really excited to dive into this topic because uh, as a society, we are having major trust issues, right?
We
It's
do.
perhaps the one of the most challenging aspects that we're dealing with in this day and age. And so super excited to hear about this. And maybe, what was it that caught your eye about this, Spencer, that said, hey, let's talk about this?
Great question. I mean, it's a topic that is, I think people, I think I understand what trust is. I trust you, I don't trust you. I mean, but do we really understand what trust is and how important it is to the success of our business operation, our team performance? And it's an element that I measure when working with teams. There are, when it comes to productivity, there are measures of things that contribute to productivity. But on the sustainability of productivity, in other words, the ability to keep productivity and engagement high, trust is one of the top indicators of that team performance sustainability, whether it's there or not. And I work with intact, executive teams regularly where trust is an issue, and it impacts how they work together, how they deal with the challenges, conflict, how they work through those, and how that then impacts their constituents, their clients, their members, whatever it is that those that they serve are impacted. Just like if two parents, Christian, aren't trusting and caring of each other, that has an incredibly negative impact on their development of their children. And so this is an issue that I think is really important for us to talk to. I measure it, I see the impact of it, but yet how do we grow it? Because it takes years sometimes to develop trust, and sometimes just seconds to destroy, maybe, as you have experienced, and I certainly have.
Yes, definitely. One of the things that I found, Spencer, that was quite interesting in this article, to your point, that both the author of the article and then Dr. Kim, who is, I guess, being interviewed by the author of the article, highlights, is the difference between competence and integrity when it comes to trust. So, generally speaking, and we are speaking in generalities here, we human beings tend to be more forgiving of shortfalls in competency. So, maybe, we were supposed to get something done by a certain date and we missed the date, and we think, well, we'll give him another shot. We'll give her another shot. And we'll start, rationalizing, well, wasn't feeling well, couldn't make it in, whatever it was. While on the flip side, you have integrity, and integrity, we tend to weigh our experiences more heavily on the negative side. As you pointed out, I've done years and years of great things, and then I do something that puts in my integrity into question, and then I'm stuck. I'm pretty much hosed.
Just to restate that, so our brains, our mentality as humans is we actually weigh information more positively when somebody does something that's related to competence, or they make a mistake, or there's a lapse in their competence, and we weigh information more negatively when it comes to their integrity. So my question to you, and I'm going to throw you on the spot here, why do you think that is? And I don't know I just love to hear your perspective.
I don't know. I guess I should go buy the book. But so I'm putting a plug in there for Dr. Kim, but my intuition tells me that there is a distinction between behavior and character. And when you're talking about competence, you're talking about someone's behavior, but and maybe their behavior fell short, but it doesn't reflect on their character. Whereas when you're talking about integrity, it's all about character, and we tend to think of something that violates the integrity of a person as a character trait. That means I'm more inherently not worthy of someone's trust because I have deep-seated character flaws. That's kind of the conclusion I draw. Could be completely wrong, but that intuitively is what I'm coming to.
Oh, I like that. I think it's great, and I agree with you. I also think it has to do with the fact of intent, right? I mean, we are making judgments about their intent for our own survival, right? Why do we typically as humans have a negativity bias, and that is a survival mechanism. We believe bad news over positive news. Why? Because in case it could be true, that's a risk to us. So when it comes to integrity or character issues, as you mentioned, well, what malfeasance if they've done it now, could they do to me in the future? And so I believe it's a way of protecting ourselves. But if somebody just forgets or doesn't follow through or doesn't know how, or is it new in a role and is overwhelmed or has expectations that are higher than their just than their ability, we're like, hey, we give them a pass. It's not because they didn't want to, it's not because they had malintent, it was because oversight, mistake, lack of skills, and we're just more giving and forgiving of those types of errors. So uh, I want to give you an example of how this lapse in how we weigh negatively integrity issues and how it affects our business. It can have a huge impact on relationships, on families, on clients. I was for I moved actually to Las Vegas in 2006 with my family to be the executive director of a children's cancer charity. I don't know if you knew that. After I worked with you in Daily Dose, that's when I went to. That was a long time ago. You and I worked in 2004 through six, and then I mean, I loved that experience of helping people. It was an organization that was growing, and I'd never worked with a nonprofit before. They needed some leadership skills, and so I brought those. And we had a board of directors providing oversight, and we had some family members who had children that were in the organization. And the person who was running all the finances was trusted. She was awesome, but she had the responsibility. She was retiring and wanted to quit, and she had the responsibility of hiring her replacement. So she hired a bookkeeper and um, and trained her. And when she left, I was working with the bookkeeper to get an audit, because one of the things that I wanted to do was get United Way funding. In order to do that, you have to have audited financials. And she kept dragging her feet, and I was like, why is this not getting done? And she kept blaming our auditing, our CPAs. So I called the CPA and I said, hey, what's going on? Can we get this done? She says, we're waiting for you. And I knew immediately that I had a problem. So I brought in the bookkeeper and interviewed her, and found that she had been lying, and I didn't know the extent of what she had done. But as soon as the person who hired her, who was training her, had left, she had started embezzling from the organization. Part of what we did as a nonprofit was care for kids with cancer, and if they needed treatment, we would pay for them to travel, and so we would have credit cards, and we would. So we had the public's trust. If they gave money to us, we were using it for helping these kids. Well, this person just believed that because they were not getting paid very much, that they deserved more, and used the canceled cards that were supposed to be canceled, used for her own plastic surgery to the tune of about $70,000. And I discovered that, but we had an oversight committee. None of the oversight committee caught that. Okay, because we were all so busy working on all the new initiatives and growing the organization and all these different things. And so what ended up happening is the board president fired me. Why? Because he was concerned of the perception of the community, of the integrity of the organization, and somebody had to take responsibility for that. Now, I'm the one who caught it, but I'm also the one who ended up paying for that. And so what
Wow.
happens is that integrity is viewed more negatively than competence. I mean, we were going fast, and they considered this, he considered this an integrity issue. Now, uh, so I went on, and that's what led me to go into. I was introduced to a leadership development company, and the rest is history, because that's really where I got my start in what I'm doing now, and I'm very grateful for that. And a year later, that same board president um, asked me to come back, because they realized, that the community was maybe a little more accepting. That was more his fear. and that will lead us to a question: do some people trust more or less than others? But in this case, he was so worried about all the donors and how they would perceive this error that somebody had to pay for it, and so that was me. That was hard to deal with for a time because I had 4 months I was unemployed, and that is something I'd never experienced before in my life. But that was the result of this person's lack of integrity. And Christian, I have to tell you that I was very interested in her prosecution. After she left, I said, hey, I will testify. I will do whatever you guys need to help you um, make sure that justice is done.
And
So
what ultimately happened?
she obviously, I mean, she was convicted of of I don't exactly know what the crime was. I just was glad that justice was served, but it was about $70,000, and for a small nonprofit, that was a lot of money. And I don't know if I haven't followed to see if she would ever pay that back. Well, the good news is that the person I had hired to be the director of development ended up becoming the executive director, and she has just done fabulous with the nonprofit, and they have done wonderful things. And one of the other board members I worked with to go on and create a vision that she had to create a clinic, and she has created a cancer treatment center in Nevada that's become one of the top nonprofits in the country, number 4. It's just amazing what they've been able to do. So I was involved in that after I left and helping her set that up. Good things came out of it, although it was painful at the time.
Wow. What an experience, Spencer. That
I've
is
never
just
told you that
crazy.
before.
I learn something new every day. Well, you mentioned, that some people may be more trusting than others. And I don't know why that is, but as we were talking, I was thinking to myself, that this idea of competence versus integrity um, isn't necessarily black and white, and it may exist on a continuum. And people who might be more trusting may look to incidents more on the competent side of the spectrum, while those who may be more distrustful or skeptical, excuse me, may look at an action more on the integrity side. So it's a reflection of character, whereas others may see, well, deep down, I mean, I know the person's a good person. They just made a mistake, and we should give them another shot. And so I'm curious, your because you've profiled so many executives, you 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 are licensed and certified to be, I don't know if licensed is the right term, but you've earned certifications that allow you to do
I
this
am certified.
for organizations and understand their different personality behavioral styles and communication styles and so on and so forth. And I'm curious if there are certain personality styles that tend to be just more trusting of others and others who tend to be more skeptical.
This is a great question, and I love it, and I actually talk a lot about it because there's information on this that I didn't develop. I have seen in my work how this shows up in different personalities, but it's I wasn't the first one to discover that there is a continuum in how people uh, see the world, events, and people in it. And uh, an interesting thought leader in the early 1900s was William Marston. He was a physiological psychologist. He developed the lie detector test. He was quite a colorful individual. He wrote a book called How Normal People Behave. And a lot of his theories were used in many of the psychometric assessments that we use today. He also created the Wonder Woman character. Interesting fellow. But one of the things he said, I mean, if you were to divide just people, and I wish I could draw it for you, and I wasn't prepared to talk about this. We didn't plan this, uh, imagine a vertical line, and then everybody on the left side of that line sees the world and the events and people in it as a challenge or as a problem. They see the negative potentialities, if you will, or potential risks. They see those first before they see the positive. So there's a stronger bias to the negative, right? And then everybody on the right side of that line, and we're talking generally, I'm not talking in every circumstance, I'm talking these principles, and I think people listening will relate to it and in their experience as well. But people on the right side will see the world as more positive and upbeat. And so he then splits it again horizontally, and everybody on above the line sees themselves as more powerful than the environment. And then everybody below sees themselves as perhaps less powerful than the environment. Not that they're effete or incapable, it's just that by themselves they may not be able to accomplish everything. So on the case of the lower left-hand side, they are over preparing, right? Because they have to have all the information. They don't want to be caught without the information. That's high conformity. On the right side, it's they by themselves can't do it, so they form a team. They gather their friends, and think of an offensive lineman. They protect their protectors, and but they see the positive, and they like people, and they like harmony. That's what he called steadiness. I mean, that's from the DISC theory, right? There's steadiness, and we call it pace/patience. But on the top right, you see the good in the world, and you're more powerful. That's this high extroversion. That's the people with influence, and they love to be with people. They see the good in people. And when I coach a lot of them, what happens is I notice that they get burned a lot. Why? Because they overestimate everybody else's competence. They see the good, that you're capable. You can do it. I believe in you. And so as a result, sometimes they get burned because they will give the benefit of the doubt. They will judge more positively than negatively. On the other hand, the ones on the top left, high, what we call dominance, they see the challenges, they see the negative. They're more, if an incident happens, they're focused more on the task than they are on the people in the relationship. And that's my personality. I had to work very hard. I mean, when my oldest daughter got in a car accident, instead of comforting her and it's going to be okay, I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to deal with this, right? And so based on how we see the world, that influences our behavior. If I see the world as a challenge, as a problem, and how's this going to affect me and my ability to pay the bills, I'm going to focus on the negative. If I'm more focused on people and relationships, I'm going to see, how can I see this as more positive? I don't know if that answers your question, but I do spend a lot of time also with people that have high conformity and high dominance, who are very judgmental and demanding, and seeing the incompetence of their people, and that they can't do the job or they can't meet the standards, that they are so hard on people and controlling and taking away authority because they don't trust, that they create disengagement with their direct reports. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, it sheds a lot of light. And so I guess when it comes to trust and being able to repair it, look at it from two sides. One is the person who is trying to make the repair and make amends, and then the other who was the, for lack of a better term, the victim, or the person who felt like you violated their trust. And I think this could be tricky. And one of the things that's mentioned in the article that speaks to the nuance of trust is how apologies are handled. And so those who view apologies for competency-related offenses or shortfalls, those apologies are generally more likely to be accepted. Why? Because we view those in a more positive light, and that this behavior was the exception, not the rule. Right. But for integrity-related violations of trust, an apology could potentially make things worse. Why? Because when you apologize, you admit guilt, which reinforces this negative message. And so the positive message of remorse and feeling guilty and yes, I'm going to do better, it doesn't resonate, because the person receiving this apology is focusing on the negative thing that you're just saying. And
I thought that was good. Sorry, I pressed the button too fast.
No, it's all
Go.
good. I'll end it there. I'll end it there. What's your take?
Well, I I agree actually with what Dr. Kim is saying, and I think one of the things he points out that's really interesting is that, you know, if you're like a CEO or a team leader, you have to be very careful about how you apologize. If you are a politician or a Kardashian or somebody that's famous and you made a gaffe or had an integrity issue, you have to be very careful about how you apologize. Why? Because people believe that you, in your position of power, are there because of some, I don't know, just because maybe you have greater opportunity, and most likely you're there because you have all these super skills, or if you don't, you've paid for them, and you have PR firms and you have handlers and you have emotional intelligence training. Therefore, you're able to manage your emotions in this situation. And so your apology probably isn't authentic, it's more strategic than it is actually real. And so they're less likely to believe you. And
That's
so an
absolutely
apology can
right.
actually cause people to distrust you even more. And this is an interesting paradox. So what do we do with this information?
It's a really, really good, it's a really, really good question. On the one hand, I can think of certain political figures who never apologize for anything,
Right.
right? And looking at it from this perspective, that's probably a smart move, right? It's like, well, I don't need to get into this situation where I'm apologizing for something because, you know, giving any kind of apology nothing good is going to come of it. So I'm just going to double down and I'm not going to apologize because apologizing doesn't have any positive outcome for me, right?
Right.
Uh, but for those who don't feel that way, yeah, you're right. The apology needs to be sincere. And what happens when we see these apologies from high profile public figures? We dissect every single word, right? So when we read a statement
Because
that
everything
says,
they say is calculated and it's written
yeah,
for them by PR firms that are managing
yeah,
them,
yeah,
even
I
managers.
apologize. I apologize uh, to anyone who may have taken offense, right? So what do? We wordsmith that and we think to ourselves, oh, well, what
You
he's
are
doing is
so
throwing
full of
it back
crap.
on the people, right? Because, we shouldn't have been offended, right?
Right.
So we do that. We do this very,
And
very,
it's condescending to us, right?
yes. so you're right. Executives face a conundrum when it comes to offering apologies. But I think there are some examples of apologies in corporate history that have resonated. Um, and I'm I'm thinking of one now. I remember when there was the the Tylenol scare back in the 80s, right?
Oh
Where
yeah, wow, that
uh,
was scary.
yeah, and what did the company do? Well, they just destroyed all the Tylenol, right? So uh, I think there are instances where an apology can be viewed as sincere when you see the company take taking action that has
We need to
potentially
do something about
significantly
it.
adverse financial consequences to the company. Uh, and so we're like, okay, well, they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's really really important is that people see that you're sincere. I think one of the things that is important for us to understand is that just you and I in general tend to gravitate towards people who think like us, who believe like us. And we're typically more likely to believe someone that believes like us, right? So, how can you use this information to help you in your apology? Um, if I'm a manager, a project manager, a CEO, an executive, a vice president, and I make a mistake, I need to I need to know my people. They need to know me. They can't just see me as an ivory tower or a citadel leader that's somewhere up there. They need to know that I care about them. They need to know that I know them. And the reason that is important, because think about who it is, Christian, that you are most likely to believe who is not like you. In other words, who has opposing opinions and beliefs that you actually listen to? Is it people that you don't know that you feel like are crazy and on the fringes? Or is it people that you personally know? And even though they have different opinions than you, you are more likely to listen to them because you know their character and you like them.
Well, definitely the latter, right? I
Sorry,
see
I didn't
this
mean
in
to be too rhetorical, but you understand what I'm talking about.
I do. I totally get it. I totally get it. And so what I gather there is if you have been up in the ivory tower and something goes amiss, then what do you do? Because it's different than, well, I've been down on the ground floor with people and they know that I'm there and I care about them. And so uh, when I make a difficult decision, for example, uh, we've had several companies lay off employees in the last few years, right? And for some of those companies, it may have been the first time there's been a layoff in that organization. And that layoff can be seen as a massive violation of trust.
Right.
And how do these leaders handle it? Some have handled it with dignity and treated the people who are departing with respect, and others have not. Just making some announcement on Zoom or something, and just it's just handled very callously, uh, which tells you that they weren't in touch and they weren't connected to their people to begin with.
Exactly. And having conversations with, hey, here's where we are as a company. I know some companies have actually taken financial hits during, the past few years just to keep people on because they just wanted to do the best they could to care for those people, even if that meant losing revenue. But you can't sustain that indefinitely. And so hard decisions have to be made. But if you're making those in really absentia of the people who are doing the work, they're going to potentially interpret your choices as self-serving. They're going to, because you're different, you're in that position of authority. They're going to really focus more on your character and on your integrity than on your competence, and so are probably less likely to be forgiving than if they knew you and spent time with you. That's I think the key message here is that get to know your neighbors, because this has huge implications for society as a whole that is so polarized, because we are, red states are in the United States are getting redder, blue states are getting bluer. Why? Because we tend to gravitate and want to be neighbors with people that are like-minded. We're just more comfortable with people that aren't challenging us all the time. On the other hand, those friends of ours that we do let into our circle, or that we go out of our way to connect with and get to know, um, it's really helpful to see the world from different perspectives. We make better decisions. That's really one of the great benefits of diversity. And so when it comes to not only people with different backgrounds, but different ways of thinking, different ways of communicating, and certainly coming from different places around the world, I love to hear from my friends in different places around the world, to hear their perspectives and from different places in the company. How's this affecting you? What's going on, and talk to them. How is this policy playing out in your world? And have those types of discussions. I mean, I think our politicians sometimes are making policy based on what they think is going to get them reelected, and not really thinking about what's happening in communities and neighborhoods and families with their decisions.
An interesting example that I just had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman who he's a long time executive in sport. He is from Brazil, and
I thought you were going to talk about that Spanish soccer coach or something. Talk
no,
about breaking trust. If you got any insights on that, I'd love to hear it.
no, I don't. But what this conversation reminded me of is, he talked about growing up in South America where, his parents were very poor. They had nothing.
Yeah.
And in order to do things, they had to be very creative and flexible and think outside the box, So he
Yeah.
would say, you know, we would have we didn't have a soccer ball. We rolled up a bunch of socks and made a ball out of it. And
That's
we didn't
great.
have we didn't have goals. And so we just put a pair of flip flops down on the ground, and these were the goals. And the reason he was telling me this was, we were talking about organizing events in various parts of the world, and sometimes difficult for someone from a more structured society to go down there and organize an event because it seems so chaotic.
Yeah. Well,
But
we have to have this resource, and that resource, and you don't have
right,
it.
so which leads to a lot of micromanaging and a lot of heartburn on the part of the event owners who
Right.
are justifiably concerned because everything's late and it's not getting done and so on and so forth. And and then you've got these folks down in South America saying, hey, don't stress about it, it's going to get done, and ultimately the event is delivered. But it just points to doing things different ways, but these different ways, because they are so different, can cause distrust, right?
Right.
And so what happens is you get organizations, they start turning the screws tighter, and you get the people
Setting
who
the
are
bar
hopeful that
higher
they
because you're not meeting our milestones.
right, they're like, hey, just we will deliver, we have to do it our way because this is the way things are done down
I
here.
love that story.
And it was just a really, really fascinating conversation to hear him talk about this,
Yeah.
uh, because you're right. When we surround ourselves with people who are like us, we do things a certain way, and that's that. But then
We become
when we,
myopic. We
yeah,
cannot see.
we go somewhere else and we get another perspective, we freak out. Well, it's not being done the way we think that it should be done, and so there's a lack of trust there, and we start trying to micromanage it even more because we're so afraid that
Although
the
living in
job's not going to
Italy in
get
the
done.
80s, registering with the authorities in the new city, that was a scary experience because the paperwork. I don't know how they kept track of anything in the 80s before computers. It was, I did not trust that they could keep track of all my documents. But somehow they seemed to make it work. But initially, I was like, "This is so crazy." Oh boy. No, I love that story, and I just think that we have a lot to learn about trust. And I think if we understand these dynamics that and use them wisely and authentically. I mean, you can't make it. I'll share another experience as working with this company called Rapport Leadership. We would do these intensive trainings, 2.5 day. You come in and it's seriously, we emotionally hijack you the whole time, put you in a roller coaster ride. It's really quite an experience. You will come out of that very confident, or assuming you have, well, anyway, one of the processes that we do is after just a couple of hours of being together, uh, I'm talking about, after the first night, um, we do a process where everyone gives each other feedback, and usually everybody in the retreat is a stranger to each other, and it is amazing, Christian, how accurate the feedback that I would receive and I saw as a trainer, total strangers give each other. My point in telling you this is sometimes we hold on to things because we don't want to be too vulnerable, right? We don't want to expose ourselves. And what I'm telling you is that we are more transparent than we ever would like to admit. Do you know a child can tell if you're authentic and paying attention or not, can't they? I mean, they
Yeah.
can really sense your sincerity. And I think that this principle is true, that we can tell if someone is we have mirror neurons. We have, if you want to call those spidey senses, whatever, that just allow us to be able to connect with people in a way. And I think these are gifts that given to us by our creator to help us connect with each other. But also they can help us detect if someone is a threat or not. And that's one of the reasons why we have them. So if you truly don't care, people will know, mostly. If you do care, I think they will feel. What do you think about that assertion?
I believe that 150,000%. Absolutely. You can tell when someone cares or not. Uh, just by, you can look, are they looking at you, and when you're talking, or are they even giving you time to talk? Do they show any interest in their uh in their facial expressions or their demeanor or their language when they talk to you? You can tell, you can definitely tell
Yeah,
when someone is sincere or when someone is not sincere, or what I mean by that is that they're actually interested in you, right?
right.
And they care about you as a person. And ultimately, that's what all this comes down to, right? It comes down to people. And uh, that's what makes this human experiment so incredibly fascinating, uh, is that it all comes down to a bunch of us imperfect beings. But at the end of the day, my personal choice is to believe in the inherent goodness of people, you know, until they give you a reason otherwise, but so, I might be a little bit gullible, but I do believe that at the end of the day, people are inherently good, and there are some bad apples that you gotta watch out for. But generally speaking, the people that I work with, the people that you work with, I would consider them good people. The
I'd
people
rather
that
be
are in.
gullible than skeptical, right?
Well, that's my
Or
personal view.
cynical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, listen, everybody that I introduce you to, speaking of trust, they are quick to trust you. And you are somebody that inspires people to believe you because of your sincerity, because of your ability to connect, and because of your just willingness to give and follow through and believe the best in people, and people sense that, and I've known that for 2 decades, and so I praise you everywhere I go, and love introducing you anytime I can, and so I know people want to find you for the services that you provide as a great consultant and project manager and leader and entrepreneur. How do they find you?
Well, thank you for those very kind words, Spencer. People can find me on LinkedIn. Just look for Christian Napier on LinkedIn. You'll find me there.
Yeah.
And happy to have a conversation and connect with anyone. And Spencer, you, my friend, are the ultimate balance of competence and integrity. Very highly competent, but also uh, you have a lot of integrity and you operate with a lot of integrity, which is why so many people trust you to help them. And if people want to learn how to connect with you and learn how you can help their organizations build more trust and improve the performance of their teams, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I love it. If you look me up on LinkedIn or go to altiumleadership.com, ALTIUM leadership.com. But message me on LinkedIn and connect with me there. I love talking to people there. I'm just trying to see if we don't have any questions. And I know sometimes with this new system, I miss those. So if I've missed you, I apologize, and we'll try to answer those on different social media. So anyway, Christian, thank you for the discussion today. I hope you enjoyed this topic. I mean, I think it's really important that um, that we talk about it and consider this in our team performance and how our building of trust and how we apologize and how we view trust is helping or hurting the team.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed the topic, and thank you, Spencer, for recommending it. And thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us. We encourage you humbly to like and subscribe to our podcast, and we'll catch you again soon.
Well, if my outro will play, we will. All right, here we go. We'll see you soon.